The Metaverse, the Internet in 3D. The Metaverse is the latest incarnation of an age-old idea that humans will spend time in simulated worlds. It employs virtual reality, and probably the best short description of it is the Internet in 3 dimensions. It's in the news now because Mark Zuckerberg is pinning the future of Facebook on it. Indeed, he's renamed Facebook's parent company Meta. And the development team says that his focus on the Metaverse project is so intense that it's like the Eye of Sauron from Lord of the Rings. But Zuckerberg has his soft and caring side too. Showing his trademark flair and panache, he wants Facebook employees to call each other Metamates. In the last few weeks, Zuckerberg has come under a lot of pressure to reduce his investment in this project. But due to the company's voting structure, he has a lot of latitude, so he'll probably hold out for a while at least. In the long run, unless we humans blow ourselves up, Zuckerberg is surely right that the Metaverse is coming, and it will be a very big deal. The two big questions are, is he right about the timing, and will we like it? In the next half hour, we'll take a quick look at the history of VR and see why it's in the news again now. We'll investigate what it means for companies and individuals and its pros and cons. I'll venture a few predictions, and I'll conclude by placing the Metaverse in the context of the information revolution. So let's start with a little history. The notion of simulated worlds really is a very old idea. Half a millennium before Christ, the Greek philosopher Plato likened humanity to a group of prisoners chained together in a cave, unable to see reality except as shadows cast by firelight on the cave's walls. 2,000 years later, René Descartes, one of the founders of modern philosophy, speculated about living in a simulation created by an evil demon. And this led Descartes to make what is probably the best known philosophical statement ever: I think, therefore I am. What do you get if you put philosophy into fancy dress? You get science fiction. And simulated worlds have been a staple of science fiction going back at least to 1932, and the Feelies, an immersive cinema experience in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. The term virtual reality was coined in the 1980s by Jaron Lanier, a computer scientist and artist, and the term metaverse was invented a decade later in Snow Crash, a book by Neil Stephenson. The best known, and arguably the best, movie featuring virtual realities and simulated worlds is The Matrix from 1999. And the second best film might well be another one released that same year, which got drowned by The Matrix's huge success. The 13th Floor is worth a look if you haven't seen it. The Metaverse isn't the first virtual reality platform. Second Life launched in 2003, and by its peak a decade later, it had over 1 million regular users who'd spent over $50 million buying virtual properties and other goods and services on the platform. Despite this success, the technology wasn't really ready, and usage is much lower today. So, the idea of the Metaverse is maybe 2,500 years old. It's been portrayed in books and films for almost a century, and the terminology is 30 years old. Why is it all over the news now? And the reason is that Mark Zuckerberg thinks the technology is almost ready to allow smart glasses to replace smartphones, and he's probably right. It takes a lot of compute power to map and represent the physical world, or create a simulated world, to a degree of realism sufficient to fool the human brain. Today, thanks to the exponential rate of increase in available computer power known as Moore's law, and thanks to modern artificial intelligence, we do have machines that can do that. They can track and capture motion in 6 directions: up, down, forwards, backwards, left and right, so as to simulate any physical space in 3 dimensions. The smartphone ecosystem is controlled by Apple and Google, and Zuckerberg hates this. If smart glasses are about to supplant smartphones, then he is determined that Meta will be a major player in the new ecosystem. Smartphones are heads down and 2-dimensional. Smart glasses will be heads up and 3-dimensional. Smart glasses may not replace smartphones so much as provide a superior window into the internet. They may be tethered to smartphones like smartwatches and AirPods are. We don't know how long it will be before, say, half of all smartphone users in the developed world regularly wear smart glasses. 5 years, maybe 10, maybe longer. But that day is coming, and when it does, it will change a lot of things about our lives. So what? What does this mean for you? In a phrase, learn, earn and burn. It means more to learn, more ways to earn, and less need to burn resources. As with any new technology, those who truly understand the metaverse have the best chance of prospering from it. Which means it's a good idea to be clear about the difference between virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality, and to know how digital twins, brain-computer interfaces, and Web 3.0 all fit in. In virtual reality, a simulated environment replaces the world which your senses perceive. Today, this generally means that a headset provides you with sights and sounds, but there is also haptic simulation, which simulates touch. There are haptic gloves and haptic suits, but these are still at a primitive stage. And even after all that, we haven't addressed the senses of smell and taste. In augmented reality, the simulated artifacts are overlaid on the real world rather than replacing it. It can make elephants swim through the air in front of you or plant a skyscraper in your back garden, but the real world remains visible throughout. The term augmented reality was coined in 1990 by Boeing researcher Tom Cordell, and the most celebrated use of AR to date was the Pokemon Go craze in 2016. A week after its launch, 28 million people were using it every day, looking for virtual Pokemon creatures to capture. In mixed reality, which for some reason is not usually abbreviated to MR, the virtual object is anchored in the real world so that you can walk around it and manipulate it. And importantly, a number of people can share the same anchored illusion. The term mixed reality was invented in 1994, and its best known incarnation is Microsoft's HoloLens. Finally, you might hear the term extended reality, or XR, which encompasses all of the above. Digital twins are simulations or models of buildings, areas or objects which can be accessed using VR or AR. Using multiple sensors and powerful computers, digital twins mirror their originals, instantaneously reflecting any changes in the original. The term is attributed to Michael Greaves of the University of Michigan in 2002. AR and VR will only be 100% immersive when your brain receives stimuli from the simulated world directly rather than indirectly via your senses. For this, we'll need technologies which are currently still the preserve of science fiction, brain-computer interfaces and mind uploading, and these are still many years away. There's another concept we should look at because it often crops up in discussions about the metaverse, and that's Web 3.0. Web 1.0 lasted from the birth of the World Wide Web in 1991 until around 2004. And in that phase, the web was basically the world's largest filing cabinet. Web pages made information available and did very little receiving. Web 2.0 saw the rise of platforms on which consumers could talk back and critically talk to each other. Much of that communication is hosted by big tech companies, Facebook, Google, Twitter, Reddit, and so on. Enthusiasts for Web 3.0 claim that it will break the chokehold these tech giants have over our information and our conversations. It's supposed to be decentralized and permissionless, in the same way that you and I can transact using the blockchain without a large intermediary or a tech firm getting involved. Blockchain technology plays an important role in the ideology of Web 3.0. Adherents hope they will return to the internet to its freewheeling, anarchic early days. And this appeals to libertarians on the political right and also to anti-capitalists on the left. And they are confident that the collapse of FTX and the disgrace of Sam Bankman-Fried is a blip rather than a dead end. The metaverse and Web 3.0 are different concepts, but they share some characteristics. They're both rather vague and will crystallize as they're built out. They will both rely heavily on AI for their development, and they are both essentially digital. And the metaverse will probably host a lot of Web 3.0 activity. VR and AR will allow companies to develop more and more compelling ways to provide information and entertainment. And the best way to explain this is with a few examples, and I'll do that shortly. Right now, the main use for VR in particular is games, which is an enormous industry. It's bigger than movies, sport and music combined. The only entertainment industry which is bigger is TV. But the metaverse will not just be about games. One of the most powerful effects of the digital revolution, which VR and AR are part of, is to make the world more intelligible. Intelligent search puts the world's knowledge at our fingertips. Intelligent maps stop us getting lost and make journeys safer and less stressful. The internet presents us with a universe of information and entertainment on a screen. VR and AR bring it to life by exploding it into 3 dimensions. When information is more compelling, it's more in demand, it's more memorable, and more money can be made from it. And the same applies to entertainment. When a game or a show is more compelling, people will engage with it more often and for longer. By making the world more intelligible, the digital revolution lets us make processes more efficient, using less time, less waste, less energy, less raw material, and less pollution. VR and AR will turbocharge this effect because they make it easier to explore ways of producing goods and services. Travel, for the right reasons, is wonderful. It broadens the mind. Done for the wrong reasons, it just broadens the behind. For many people, Zoom meetings were a silver lining in the pandemic cloud. Many meetings don't merit the time and hassle of the travel they require. But Zoom's not sufficient because 2D images have narrow bandwidth. When we meet in real life, we exchange enormous amounts of data in our facial expressions and our body language. This becomes especially important when more than 2 people are meeting. Because it's 3D, VR boosts the bandwidth of our communications. It allows us to pick up nuances which a phone call or a Zoom call cannot convey. Consequently, it will reduce the need for tedious travel, saving us time and money and cutting down environmental impacts. Before we get into the real pros and cons of the metaverse, let's slay some myths. Every new medium is greeted with panic, and the metaverse will be no exception. 2,500 years ago, the Greek philosopher Socrates protested that writing would erode people's memories. 2,000 years later, the printing press generated fierce opposition, and more recently the telephone, cinema, radio, TV, the internet have all provoked moral panics. The great Douglas Adams, creator of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, put it well. Anything that exists when you're born is just a natural part of the way the world works. Anything invented between when you're 15 and 35 is new and exciting, and you can probably make money with it. Anything invented after you're 35 is against the natural order of things and should be banned. So what will the moral panics about the metaverse be? One is that Facebook will monopolize the metaverse. Sometimes I think I am the only person in the world who doesn't think that Facebook is the source of all evil. And that does make me wonder how Nick Clegg justifies his $30 million a year salary as flat catcher and chief for Zuckerberg. But whether you hate it or tolerate it, Facebook is very unlikely to own the metaverse. There will be platform wars. Meta has Oculus, but Microsoft has the HoloLens. Google has tried Cardboard, Dream and Google Glass and is expected to launch something new next year. So is Apple. And Amazon is unlikely to stand idly by. Will the outcome be winner takes all, like when VHS overcame Betamax to be the format for videotapes? Or will there be a small number of walled gardens, as with smartphones? Or will there be open standards like the internet, in which you can move freely between different platforms, perhaps even using the same avatar and data in each of them? The mere prospect of a winner-takes-all outcome would provoke howls of outrage from the losers and also from consumers and regulators. Walled gardens are a possibility, but I'm optimistic that open standards will prevail, with handshakes and rules of the road like TCP/IP for the internet. Another fear is that millions of people will simply disappear into virtual worlds never to be seen again. These people are called teenagers. This ignores the fact that humans have been programmed by hundreds of thousands of years of evolution to be intensely social animals. This programming cannot be erased in a few years or decades. The great majority of teenage boys do not spend most of their gaming time in solitary first-person shooters. They're generally hanging out with friends. It turns out that fighting orcs can be a very social activity. The third concern is inequality. And the fear here is that smart glasses will be expensive, so they'll only be available to the rich, the digerati, and average people will languish on the wrong side of a VR divide. A response to this, which is persuasive but sometimes unpopular, is where is the fridge divide? Where is the phone divide? If something's valuable, it will reach the mass market. This is simple economics. Tech companies make far more money selling affordable items to everyone than selling diamond-encrusted versions to a handful of oligarchs and celebrities. In fact, rich people tend to be our guinea pigs, early adopters of tech that just doesn't work very well, allowing the tech companies to climb the learning curve and make better, cheaper versions for the rest of us. Once VR becomes mainstream, the great majority of the people in developed economies, and a surprising number of people in the developing economies, will be able to afford it. But there will be refuseniks, just as there are people, though not many, who spurn the use of smartphones and computers. And these people may start to feel digitally blind. I'm not going to claim that it will be all sunshine and rainbows. There are some clouds in the metaverse, but they are problems to solve rather than inescapable flaws. The web and AI have raised privacy as an issue, and VR and AR will aggravate it. In order to function properly, the metaverse needs to know what you're looking at and to read your facial expressions. Clearly, that data could be misused. Louis Rosenberg is the founder of AI company Unanimous AI, and he's worked on AI for the US Air Force for decades. He fears the metaverse may be plagued by 3 M's: monitor, manipulate, and monetize. Privacy is a valid concern, but digital technologies only work if they're fed data. We need to share some of our data to obtain the benefits of our advancing technologies. We need to strike a balance, and we're going to need judicious regulation. Maybe private companies shouldn't be allowed to collect or retain certain kinds of data. There should probably be time limits to many kinds of data storage and transparency about what data is stored. Pessimists have had fun depicting simulated environments which are hellscapes of virtual advertising. Think of the shopping mall scene in the 2002 Tom Cruise movie Minority Report. As I said, I don't think Facebook is the root of all evil, but I will certainly agree that it's got form in the area of intrusive ads. But there's a simple remedy. If a virtual environment goes too far with intrusive and irritating ads, then users will go elsewhere. The history of IBM, Microsoft, and many long forgotten companies show that no tech company has a permanent stranglehold. Where there are people, and especially where there's money, there will be fraud. Fraudsters include some of the most ingenious members of our species, and they will be enthusiastically exploring ways to make life miserable for the rest of us by conning and cheating us in VR. There'll be an arms race, and as usual, the good guys will stay slightly ahead, mostly. Good news is no news, and bad news is good news. With most stories and most social developments, it's easier and more fun to talk about the things that can go wrong than about the things that can go well. We are wired to think more about problems than about benefits, for the very good reason that benefits don't need to be fixed, so they don't need our attention. The benefits of compelling VR and AR will be better information and better entertainment. Much better. The internet in 3D will be a dramatic improvement in our quality of life. We'll connect more easily with friends, families, colleagues, and acquaintances. Many aspects of our daily lives will become more fun. We'll have access to more information, and that information will be far more easy to absorb and learn. We'll have more control over the environments we inhabit. Even if those environments are virtual, they will feel very real to us. And we'll have access to experiences which previously only very rich people could enjoy. They won't be the real thing, the base reality, but they will be enjoyable nonetheless. So, let's see what this might look like in practice. Forecasts are dangerous, especially about the future. But what's the use of a futurist who never makes predictions? So, with the caveat that all forecasts are wrong, here is a possibly slightly bullish forecast about how the metaverse might unfold. 2025. Facebook Horizons has become a full-fledged successor to Second Life, in the sense that many companies have set up shop there. The property market is hot, and millions of people spend at least an hour a week there, and other platforms are emerging to compete. 2027. VR platforms are populated by photorealistic avatars, as well as animated ones, with a bewildering array of shapes and sizes. Early adopters are appearing on the streets of wealthy cities, using smart glasses to view the information generated by their smartphones. 2032. In some cities, smart glasses are now as common a sight as smartphones were a decade before. And many people now spend more than an hour every day in VR. Haptic suits are impressively immersive, but still expensive. And let's imagine some of the use cases we might see then. First, here's a couple of use cases involving AR, augmented reality. A mechanic fixes your self-driving electric car, a model they've never worked on before, using AR glasses. The glasses lead them through each step of the repair process, almost as if they already had a memory of it. 2. Your interior designer delights you with a decorative scheme for your living room, which you develop together into a final plan. Third is a use case involving AR and digital twins. Your route around a supermarket is programmed by the digital assistant running on your phone. The assistant refers to the store's digital twin to locate each item on your shopping list. Your glasses show you where each successive item is and gives you information about their price, their nutritional value, and so on. Now one involving mixed reality. Students exploring the structure of the human brain in 3 dimensions. And a couple involving VR. You assemble a group of colleagues from disparate places and discuss a delicate HR issue thoroughly. The bandwidth of 3D avatars, even before they become photorealistic, is far greater than flat screens can achieve. And let's end with a use case which some people will find quite creepy. A company called Hereafter makes chatbots which recreate, in a very approximate way, the personalities of dead relatives. They're fed with videos, recordings, photos, and writing by and about the people. It's surely only a matter of time before Hereafter or someone else takes the next step and makes the chatbot into a virtual reality avatar. As I say, some people are going to hate this idea, but others will find it a huge consolation. You might have noticed that none of these VR examples involve motion, and this is because people often get sick if they move within the simulated environment while they're static in the real world, and this isn't nice. One way around it is not to move within the simulated environment. Another is teleportation. In the final part of this talk, I'll argue that the Metaverse is part of something very big, the information revolution. You've heard of Moore's law, the observation that computers get twice as powerful every 18 months or so, which means exponential growth. Like Mark Twain, reports of Moore's law's demise are exaggerated. It isn't dead or dying, it's evolving, which it always has done. There is plenty more. And that has very profound consequences, which few people take as seriously as they should. For instance, the fact that the machines we have in 30 years' time will be 1,000,000 times more capable than the machines we have today if Moore's law continues. It's difficult to overstate the significance of that, and it's important not to understate it. And unfortunately, a lot of people have internalized the slogan which does understate it, and that's the idea that we're living through the 4th industrial revolution. I think we're living through something much bigger than that. We're in the early stage of the information revolution, humanity's biggest transformation yet. The first human transformation was the cognitive revolution around 70,000 years ago, when we developed complex language and the ability to collaborate on large-scale projects. Around 12,000 years ago, we had the agricultural revolution, which was a terrible thing for individual humans, but a great advance for the species, as it enabled specialization and food surpluses, and cities, which are machines for innovation, and led in turn to the Industrial Revolution, which was ignited in the UK in 1712. People often talk about the Industrial Revolution as if it was a bad thing, but the fact is, most people in the developed world today, and a great many in the developing world, live better lives than kings and queens did 400 years ago. What we're now seeing is the early stages of the information revolution, which got started around 1960. And the information revolution will have a bigger impact than any of its predecessors. Will we like it? Well, Hollywood likes to give us dystopian visions of the future, like Blade Runner, The Matrix, and The Terminator. It doesn't offer many upbeat visions, never mind utopian ones. On the whole, it seems to prefer Star Wars to Star Trek, which of course is just plain wrong. We might get dystopia. It's not impossible. For instance, populism and polarization could take us there. The horror being inflicted on Ukraine by the arch-populist Putin demonstrates that. But it's very far from inevitable. Populism isn't new. It comes and goes in waves, and sometimes it leads to war, which extinguishes it. Who knows? The war in Ukraine might be the beginning of the end of this particular wave of populism. If we don't get dystopia, will we get its opposite, utopia? There are two big problems with the concept of utopia. First, it's ridiculously implausible. We will never achieve perfection. Second, it would be boring. Nothing would change. There'd be no excitement. Fortunately, there's a much better alternative to dystopia available. It's called protopia. A protopia is a world where most things are pretty good, and bit by bit they just keep on getting better. If we're smart, and perhaps a bit lucky, the metaverse and the exponential technological rush it's part of can give us protopia. Thank you.